will tell a story from a forgotten corner of history beneath the earth, where the air was damp, the walls were mud, and time moved. Slowly, in a trench far from home, something happened. Something quiet, something real. So close your eyes and let the past drift in, like a slow breath in the dark dot. Welcome to the story. You are now traveling through time. Close your eyes. Slowly drift back more than 100 years, to a time when the world trembled under the weight of war, yet a single soldier, beneath the earth, searched only for sleep, for a moment of peace. The world around me is still, only far in the distance. I can hear the thunder of artillery, soft and rhythmic, like the breath of some sleeping giant. Sometimes, the ground beneath us gently shudders, reminding us that this quiet is never really safe. I'm in the trench, at the far edge of the Western Front, leaning against the damp wall. Boots sunk halfway into the cold mud. Over my head, wooden beams and sandbags make a roof, but it leaks when it rains, and always smells of mold, smoke, and earth. My name is Thomas Henry Clark. I was 21 when I left home, in my coat pocket. I still carry the handkerchief my mother gave me. It smells faintly of lavender. She told me to keep it close, so I never forget who I was before the war. The trench means mud. The trench means boots filled with cold water. The same rotting stew each day. The same gray sky. The same aching knees. And the same fear, coiled in your chest like a sleeping snake. When I first arrived, we all thought it would be over in a few months. We joked about Christmas back home. That was 3 years ago here. Dawn comes late. The sun hesitates to rise over this scarred land. I open my eyes to the groan of shovels, the rustle of rats, and the soft muttering of men waking from another dreamless night. Some of the faces are new. Some are missing. Last night, the stretcher bearers came quietly. No one asked who they took. We've grown used to the sight of still bodies. They no longer shock us. Only the smell tells you who's fresh. And even that, we've learned to ignore. This morning, Harold received a letter. It was from his wife. She wrote that Jamie has started to walk. He held the letter in both hands, reading it over and over again. His eyes were wet, but he smiled, just barely. I sat beside him and said nothing. In the trenches, we don't intrude on a man's joy. It's the only thing that still belongs to him. Lunch means hot water and stale. Biscuits, maybe a spoonful of stew if we're lucky, and a long silent sigh that carries with it weight of everything we've lost. Sometimes we hear the Germans laughing. Their trench is only 30 yards away. Maybe they're also trying to forget. Maybe they're just like us, young, cold, and afraid at night. I sit in my corner. I have a tin cup of lukewarm tea. I sip slowly, while the artillery hums in the distance. I think about my little home in Surrey, the sound of trains in the distance, the rustle of newspapers on Sunday morning, the soft creak of the stairs when Mother climbed them, trying not to wake anyone. My world was once so quiet, so gentle. Now, peace only comes in sleep. And even sleep is afraid to visit this place. Last night I dreamt I had returned. My mother opened the door, her eyes filled with tears. Harry ran to me, arms wide. I could smell the kitchen roast and potatoes, warm bread on the table. Then I woke up. Beside me lay Harold. His leg was soaked in blood, He groaned in pain, and the medic hadn't yet arrived. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just stared, and wondered, will any of us ever truly return? The night deepens. The wind outside has stilled. Only the occasional boom of a distant shell reminds us we're still alive. Tonight, I will try to close my eyes again, and maybe, just maybe, sleep will come, before the shells begin to fall again, before another name disappears, before the morning silence is broken. I want to sleep. Just for a while. In the world of trenches, time seems to melt away. We don't count dates anymore. We only keep track of sunrises and sunsets. Everything else it's better forgotten this morning. I awoke to the distant sound of a horse's faint whinny. That sound felt strange here because horses don't come near the trenches. Nothing fresh does. I looked out and saw a thin layer of smoke in the distance. Something was burning wood, perhaps, or the remains of a shattered kitchen. Beside me, Harold sat in silence. His right leg was wrapped in a cloth. It was once white, now soaked with dull, drying blood. He didn't say a word. I sat next to him, equally silent. These days, we understand silence better than words. Time down here flows like a kind of river. It moves, but it has no destination. We just stand in it, feet buried in mud, eyes fixed on the horizon. A small bird landed on the trench wall, unfamiliar yet brave. We stared at it. Harold whispered, "That bird is the freest thing here." I nodded and replied, "It doesn't know what war is." They've cleared out a new space next to our trench. We've heard fresh soldiers are arriving. They're young, clean, wide dash. I dot their eyes, don't yet hold fear, but they'll learn soon enough. Fear finds a home inside your breath. Afternoon is settling in. We sit down to eat. Today, it's supposed to be some kind of vegetable soup, though there's no sign of any vegetables in it. A small piece of potato now. Feels like a festival. Harold received a letter. His wife wrote that their son, Harry, came first in class. Harold closed his eyes and whispered, "If only I could hold him. ... I said nothing. I simply offered him a scoop of the watery soup later in the day. Water seeped into our boots. Rain had returned. The trench began to flood with brown, heavy mud. Some men removed their boots. Some just sat quietly, too tired to react. The sky was turning dark. Lights don't shine here, not because there are none, but because light invites bullets. So we move through the dark, quietly. Suddenly, a shell exploded nearby. The trench trembled. Screams, smoke, and flying earth surrounded us. I dropped to the ground when it ended. Everything seemed slow again. Voices returned muted, shaken. Someone was crying. Someone was moaning. A soldier lay on the ground, half his body missing. His eyes were still open, staring at nothing. No one said a word. We're used to it now. That night, when silence returned, I sat down in my usual place, tin cup in hand, though there was no tea tonight, just warm water. Tonight, I'm thinking of my mother. She's probably standing at the edge of the porch, watching the road, wondering, will a letter come today? I don't know if my letters ever reach her, but I write every day just to say I'm still alive. Earlier, I dreamed I had returned home. I stood on the veranda. My sister saw me and cried out. My mother held me tightly. I could smell the roast, the potatoes, fresh bread on the table. Then I woke up in the trench, in the cold, with wet boots. Those of us who survive here, we survive through sleep. Sleep is our ceasefire tonight. Many sit quietly, only the wind speaks, and the sound of boots stuck in mud. I know it will all begin again tomorrow, but before that, I need sleep. I close my eyes. Everything is silent. No sounds, just my own breath. Somewhere, far away, I hear a bird call. Even in this darkness, something whispers, "You are still alive." And I decided tonight, I will sleep. Just for a while, in search of peace. The night air feels strange tonight. Colder, heavier. The smell of the earth beneath us is stronger than usual. Every breath I take feels like I'm swallowing the trench itself. It's not frightening anymore. It's simply something we've learned to live with. Harold hasn't spoken all day. His eyes remain closed. But I know he isn't sleeping here. Sleep doesn't come when you want it. When it comes, it's like falling into a different world, a world without shells, without shouting, without fear. Something unusual happened today. A new boy joined our unit. His name is Alfred. He's just 18. Bright eyes, a clean rifle, a sun-darkened bag on his shoulder. He smiled and saluted everyone. Some nodded back. Most didn't look up. I told him, "Listen, young man, don't smile too much here. But don't cry either. Both are expensive things here, and no one gives them back once they're gone." Alfred spent his first night confused. He asked me, "Sir, how long have you been here?" I didn't answer, because whatever I say, he won't understand. Time here is not something you count. It's something you survive. Around noon, I received a letter, this time, for me. My mother's handwriting. The paper was yellowed. The ink faded. She wrote, "Your little brother has started playing outside. You used to be like him, quiet, but with fire in your eyes." I pressed the letter against my chest. It felt like someone had touched me for the first time in months. Later in the day, we heard shelling again. Some said it was just a warning shot. Others whispered, "Something big is coming." None of us moved. Too much. We know by now, every sound brings death. But the one that does, never makes much noise. In the evening, Alfred asked me, "Sir, can you sleep at night?" I smiled and said, "Yes. But in those dreams, I don't see myself. It's like I disappear into the fog." Rain fell again today. The trench filled with water, cold soaked through our boots. No one took them off, because if your foot gets cut, you get infected. And out here, that means a slow death. Dinner was one dry biscuit. Too hard for our teeth still. We ate in silence. No one complained, because even a bite of something real is better than the hunger. Our conversations have grown shorter. These days, we speak more with our eyes, sometimes with a touch, a nod, or the offer of a handkerchief tonight. The sky cleared for the first time in weeks. Stars peeked through the darkness. I looked up. It had been so long since I'd seen the stars. They looked like faith. Distant, silent, but unmoving, they reminded me. Though my feet are in the mud, my eyes can still rise. I whispered, "Mother, I'm still here, still alive." But staying alive doesn't just mean breathing. It means waiting. Waiting to see another morning. Harold came to sit beside me. He looked at my face for a long time, his eyes filled with exhaustion. He said, "If I ever get to go home, I won't talk. I'll just sit in the corner of my house. That's all I want. I replied, "You're right. Peace now means just a corner, a chair, and a kettle of tea." Night deepened. The air grew colder. The scent of the trench earth and rust and rain grew stronger. My eyes were burning, but I wanted to sleep. There were no shells tonight, only silence. And that kind of silence, it's the one that makes you uneasy. Still, I closed my eyes. Maybe I'd dream of my mother's face, of my little brother running across the yard, of the light through the kitchen window, and if I could feel a little of that peace, just for a few minutes, then this night might be bearable. I don't know who'll still be here tomorrow, but this night, this quiet breath of night, this I want to hold on to. Tonight, I just want to sleep, for a while. The next morning was strangely quiet. The air felt soft, cold, but the sunlight had a warm shimmer to it. There were no gunshots, no shouting. The silence felt unnatural, not peaceful, but the kind of silence that arrives before something terrible happens. We all woke up, but no one spoke. Harold sat quietly, leaning against the dirt wall. His head was down, but his eyes were open. It looked like he was lost in a memory. Perhaps one from a world without mud and rifles. I looked around the trench. Dew sparkled on the damp ground. A loose pigeon feather drifted in the breeze, just beyond the far end of the unit. Little things like this. They've become our biggest moments now. News had come in from the unit. Next 2 hours, 2 soldiers were missing overnight. They likely wandered into a minefield during the rainy night. Nobody said it out loud, but we all knew they wouldn't be coming back. Harold sat with one boot off, his foot swollen and red with a slow-growing wound. I told him, "You'll make it worse like that." He smiled, not with joy, but with a tired emptiness in his eyes. "What's left to make worse?" He said softly, "I know this leg won't see a saddle again, not ever." Later in the morning, food arrived. Today, it was boiled chickpeas and a pinch of salt. Still, everyone ate in silence. No complaints, at least. It was something Alfred, the new boy who'd joined days ago. He was quieter today. Last night, he had helped move a body. The man's face was half melted from a blast, his eyes still open. Alfred hadn't spoken since. I understood something inside him had cracked. It happens to all of us, little by little, but from the outside, you'd never know. Around noon, there was no rain. The sun appeared for the first time. In days, light touched the trench walls. The brown mud began to dry at the surface. I looked up. Clouds drifted across the sky, white calm. Once I could predict storms by looking at them. Now they were just ghosts from another life. Suddenly, a flock of pigeons passed overhead. Some soldiers glanced up. One whispered, "If I could fly like that." I stayed silent. I, too, wished I could fly far beyond these fences. To hills where bombs don't fall, where rivers whisper instead of guns. Later in the afternoon, an order came: patrol at 10 tonight. My name was on the list. So was Alfred's. We know what patrol means. It means maybe you come back. Maybe you don't still. We prepared in silence. Night fell slowly. We left the trench quietly, boots in mud, weapons in hand, eyes adjusting to the dark. No lights, just dirt beneath us, our breath, and the pounding of quiet hearts. The moon gave just enough light to see a little. We crawled low. The silence was so deep, I could hear my own heartbeat thudding inside my chest. A sound rustling leaves ahead. We froze, held our breath. Alfred was right beside me, his hand trembling slightly. I slowly reached over and placed a hand on his shoulder. He looked at me. I said nothing, but my eyes told him, it's not over yet. Stay steady. That night, we made it back safely. But something still clung to the mind. War always leaves something behind, invisible, but heavy as iron. Back at the trench, Harold was asleep. There was a kind of tired peace on his face. Maybe, in dreams, he was somewhere else where there were no rifles, no rusted tin cups, only hay beds under golden light. I lay down. There was a strange quiet in me tonight. No one had died today. Maybe, just maybe, I'd dream of my father's garden. I closed my eyes. The same familiar sounds returned: breath, wind, and the darkness, soaked in the scent of damp earth. And in that darkness, I let myself fall asleep, just for a little while. The next morning began with a strange stillness. The sky was bright, but inside us, there was no light at all, though we had all returned safely the night before. A piece of that darkness had followed us back into the trench. Harold still didn't say much today. He was sitting quietly, brushing dust from an old pair of shoes. They were stiff with mud. Empty. He knew he'd never wear them again. I sat nearby, writing a letter. Not to my mother this time. This one was for my younger brother. I wrote, when you read this, I may not be alive anymore. But if you grow up someday, I hope you never see war. By afternoon, a new man joined our trench. His name was Robert, maybe 30 lines around his eyes. A smile that looked like it had been broken halfway through forming. The first thing he said was, I've spent 3 years in prison. No one asked. Why? Here. We don't ask what people were before. We only know what they are now. Robert sat beside me in silence. Minutes passed, then he spoke. This trench. It's my home now. Everything else is too far away. I understood. This narrow pit, lined with dirt and memory, was all we had left. Days, nights, fears. Ghosts all mixed into the same mud. In the evening, rain began to fall thin, cold and steady. We covered our heads with bags. Mud filled our boots. Our clothes clung to our skin, but no one moved. Alfred was sitting with his arms wrapped around his knees. His face was tighter than usual. I asked, aren't you afraid? He answered, fear is normal now. I'm just scared I'll never see my mother's face again. I didn't reply, because I felt the same. Her face is the last light I carry with me later that night. There was a blast not far from us. The trench shook. Black smoke rose from the next unit. No one screamed. Someone said, we're next. Another whispered, if we're lucky, we'll live. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to hear anything more. I focused only on my heartbeat. The last thing that proved I was alive. As night deepened, everyone lay down quietly. There were no blankets, no warmth, and no one left to hold. I lay flat on cold stone. My neck ached. Water crept into my spine. Still, my eyelids grew heavy. Just before I drifted off, I saw myself standing by a river. My father behind me. My little brother running ahead. The call of birds. The sound of a boat rocking. And the slow, clear rush of water. It all felt real. I opened my eyes. I was still in the trench. Still in the dark. Still breathing air laced with damp earth and death. When morning came again, Robert said, "If I survive today, I'll sing a song tonight." Someone laughed, a soft, dry laugh. The first laughter we had heard in days. War, by now, had stopped being about fighting. It was about routine. Waking up meant we were alive. Nightfall meant we had waited again. The new day began like all others. A tin cup, barely warm water, broken bricks, wet walls, and faces that held no stories anymore, just silence and breath. I don't know how long this will continue, but for now, this silence, this weak sunlight, and this trench, this is my whole world, and in this world, I just want to sleep. Just for a little while. The night after the rain was cold and still. Drops of dew fell softly from the trench walls, each landing with a quiet tap, like tiny notes in a distant song. The world outside seemed to have paused, suspended in a deep, unconscious sleep. We lay silent, but all of us knew this calm would not last. War never brings peace. It only teaches us how to wait. Harold was curled up beside me, his body frail and worn. Once he had been strong and full of laughter, but now his eyes held only fatigue. His foot was swollen and sore, a slow-burning pain that deepened with every passing day. He ran his hand over the open shoe resting by his side and whispered, "These feet will never carry me back to a horse's saddle again." I listened without words. No one needed to speak the truth. We all shared that this war was a dark chapter in our lives, where every breath was a witness to a soldier's silent suffering. I traced the edges of a small folded photograph in my pocket. A picture of my family, my mother's gentle smile, my younger brother's bright, innocent grin. These memories were my only refuge now, though the air inside the trench was cold. My heart burned. Each new day was a fresh test, sometimes bullets, sometimes bombs, sometimes terrible silence, all blending into the rhythm of our lives. This afternoon, Alfred, the new boy, seemed different. He sat quietly in a corner, eyes hard and steady. I looked at him and asked, "Are you afraid?" He nodded slowly. Fear has become normal, but what scares me most is never seeing my mother's face again. My throat tightened. No one can understand how deeply we long to see the faces of those we love. As night fell, the bombardment began distant. Explosions, the earth trembling beneath us. We sat close together. No one crying or shouting, but the sorrow was visible in every hidden tear. Suddenly, the commander's voice broke the quiet. "Prepare for patrol tonight." The words fell like a shadow over us all. Patrol meant stepping deeper into the dark, into the unknown. I checked my rifle, counted my bullets, and suddenly felt how weak my body had become. War was breaking us down, inside and out. When night came, we crawled from the trench. Dot flares lit the distant sky. Dust hung thick in the air. We moved low, heads down, eyes wide open, because closing them could mean stepping on a mine or falling into death's trap. Alfred's hand trembled next to mine. I placed my hand gently on his shoulder. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." Every minute of that patrol felt like a delicate balance between life and death. Every sound could stop a heartbeat. Every silence a whisper of doom. We returned safely, but something inside us had changed forever. War was no longer just about fighting, it had become part of our very souls. Before sleep, I held the photo close again and took a deep breath. I longed to see my mother's face once more. I longed to be free from this terrible life. No one knows when this war will end. But tonight, I only want to sleep. Just for a little while. Night deepened, and darkness thickened around us. The trench walls soaked in the smell of damp earth. Dew collecting softly on the mud above, and each breath of wind seemed to count our suffering. Our small group sat silently, eyes drained of confidence, staring into the distant blackness, where only shadows of death danced in our hearts. A strange mixture of fear and faint hope lived side by side. We recalled the pain and sorrow of the deadly comrades we lost, who would never return again. Suddenly, it felt like war was not only death, but a kind of deep loneliness too. I noticed Alfred's eyes flickering strangely. It was as if his world had changed 1,000 times in a blink. He came close to me and whispered, "Do those who survive ever learn to live again with love?" I had no answer. My heart was heavy, because I knew many of us once began fighting for love itself. Robert was completely silent today. He traced patterns in the dirt with his finger, as if searching for a lost memory. Half a smile, half a sorrow rested on his face. No one knew the depth of his story. The sky slowly shifted from black to blue, and then rays of sunlight began to scatter gently. We knew the coming night would be harsh. Light could never erase the deep darkness of war. Our commander announced, "At 3 a.m. we launch a special mission. Be ready." The words fell like a suffocating breath over us all. We felt trapped beneath the earth. I pressed my hands into the cold dirt. A chill ran through me, but my mind buzzed with tension. A strange mix of fear and resolve. We formed small teams. None of us truly knew what awaited. To step into the night meant walking into death or rebirth. Who could sleep now? Sleep was a stranger in our lives, gripping our rifles tightly. We slipped quietly into the darkness. The path was rough, muddy, and full of holes. Someone stumbled, but kept silent. We all froze. The silence deepened like a thick fog. One of our men fell and sat down, wincing in pain. We helped him. But these small obstacles made survival even harder. We came upon a small ditch to cross. Its cold water swirled and floated with debris. Slowly, we stepped in. Though the water was freezing, our spirits burned each step, a fight to live. After crossing, the chill grew sharper. We entered deeper darkness, where even the air felt heavy. I thought, if something happens now, none of us will ever see daylight again. Our bodies trembled, but our minds slowly readied for battle. Alfred leaned close and said, "I think tonight will decide our fate." I nodded. A strange calm settled within me. No matter how brutal the war, our will to survive remained unbreakable. Finally, we reached our target. Enemy forces held the ground. Our commander signaled silence. Slow, careful movements. No sound allowed. We crawled forward, our hearts pounding like drums ready to burst. Suddenly, a loud explosion shook the earth. Dust flew into the air. For a moment, all was black. One of our men was wounded. Alfred dropped beside him. I grabbed Alfred's hand and said, "Don't be afraid, we're here." In that dark night of war, we stood together, caught between life and death. Those moments taught us who we truly were. The next few hours passed in a blur of fear and courage. Even facing danger, we stayed strong. Finally, the first light of dawn spread across the sky. We returned to the trench. Not everyone was whole. Some were lost, some hurt, some exhausted, but we lived. That was our small victory. Our story was more than war. It was a story of survival, of unyielding spirit. I carried that night in my memory where fear lived, but courage too, where darkness reigned, but light remained. I closed my eyes once more, longing for peace, longing for sleep just for a little while. Nightfall came slowly, but the darkness deepened faster than before. Every breath we took felt heavier, and each distant sound echoed like a whisper from a world we no longer belonged to. Our small group sat quietly, gathered behind the wall of mud and wire, a place where water and earth mixed freely, and even time seemed to move more slowly. Our bodies were weary, our minds burdened, but in our eyes, a strange glimmer remains, the faintest ember of hope. Today wasn't special, it was like every other day. And yet, in war, every day writes its own chapter. Here, the line between life and death was always thin, barely a breath apart. Alfred was different today. He held his weapon close and muttered softly, "There are no songs here, no sound of laughter, only the voice of rain and war." I listened quietly. Inside me, only one thing remained clear, a simple dream, to imagine life without war. Suddenly, a thunderclap rang from the distance, but this was not the sound of nature. It was a curse echoing across the fields. We froze, because behind every boom came the shadow of death. Robert stood up slowly. "How long can we stay buried in this earth?" he asked. "Will we ever see light again?" No one replied, but something in all of us stirred. Even in the dark, that question lit a tiny flame. Night grew deeper. The commander summoned us. "Prepare for the next operation." Midnight approached. No mistakes. This would be the most dangerous mission yet, a path few returned from. I cleaned my weapon, checked my rounds, and took a long, deep breath to steady my nerves. The commander's voice came again, low and firm. Not a sound. Move as one, no hesitation. We formed lines, eyes focused, steps careful. The mud sucked at our boots. The night clung to our skin, but our hearts beat loud beneath our silence. We crossed ditches, slippery bends, and shallow streams that smelled of death. Water soaked through our clothes, but no one complained. At one point, I slipped, my foot twisted slightly, and I fell to one knee. Alfred reached out instantly, grabbed my arm, and said softly, "Careful, we're close." We kept moving. Enemy territory was just ahead. Their lights flickered faintly in the distance, like stars dying behind clouds. And suddenly, I felt it. We weren't just soldiers anymore. We were ghosts, moving through the night, carrying the weight of every fallen brother with us. The enemy's watchfires burned dimly. Our commander signaled. We were to wait, crawl and strike silently. Alfred whispered, "If we survive this, I want to see my brother again. I don't care about anything else." I nodded. In war, it was the small things, a voice, a face, a memory that kept us going. We crept forward, a sound crackling twigs. A guard had spotted us. Alfred fired first. The silence broke. The night roared, gunfire, shouting, smoke, everything blurred. Each second felt like eternity. I fired until my rifle clicked empty. My hands trembled. I reloaded with my teeth gritted. after nearly an hour of chaos. We fell back. Not everyone made it. Blood ran in small streams. Some faces were missing. Some eyes stared without blinking, but we were alive. We carried our wounded. We said nothing. The sunrise greeted us coldly, its light falling on tired shoulders. As we walked back to the trench, I looked behind me once, and wondered how much more we could lose for. We lost ourselves. Back inside the trench, I sat alone. I took out the photograph, my younger brother, smiling. He looked so far away now, but I held that image close. We were still here. This war, these endless nights, they hadn't taken everything, not yet. And somehow, in the stillness, in the cold morning air, a strange peace settled. The kind of peace you feel not from safety, but simply from surviving one more night. I closed my eyes. All I wanted now was to sleep just for a little while. The morning after the assault was quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. A kind of silence that didn't comfort, but rather pressed down on your chest like a stone. We didn't speak much. There was nothing left to say. The trench walls were wet again, beads of moisture dripping slowly, just like they did every morning. Everything felt the same. And yet, something inside us had shifted. Alfred sat near the edge, staring at the mud. He hadn't touched his food. His helmet rested by his side, dented from the night before. I watched him for a while, before saying, "We made it back." He didn't answer, but his lips moved slightly. Maybe he was talking to someone who wasn't there anymore. Robert, with a bandage wrapped around his left arm, tried to light a cigarette with trembling hands. The flame flickered, died, flickered again. Finally, he gave up and tucked it back into his coat. He looked up and said, "You ever notice how loud silence is in the morning?" I nodded, yes. It was deafening. Time passed slowly, measured not in hours but in drops of water falling from overhead wooden beams. A few soldiers nearby were digging again, a new offshoot to the trench. They were quiet too. No jokes, no humming, just the scrape of metal against mud. Even the birds didn't sing that morning. Later, we received orders. Prepare for incoming wounded, evac point is down. Which meant more work, more blood, more eyes looking at us for help we weren't trained to give. The first stretcher arrived at noon. A boy no older than 16, his left leg gone from the knee down. He stared straight ahead, but his mouth trembled, like he was praying silently. I knelt beside him, held his hand. He didn't look at me, but he squeezed once hard and then let go. One by one, they came. Faces burned, hands missing, some silent, some screaming. Each of them carried a piece of the night we thought we had left behind. And I kept thinking, this isn't a battlefield, it's a graveyard we haven't buried yet. By evening, the trench smelled of smoke, sweat, and antiseptic. The medics did what they could. Sometimes all they could do was hold someone's head and wait for the breathing to stop. I sat beside Alfred again, both of us facing the narrow entrance to our dugout. No one else was around. The sky had turned gray, and a soft drizzle had begun. We didn't move, we didn't speak, we just sat, letting the rain tap against our helmets. At one point, Alfred said, "You ever think about after? Like, if this ends, what then?" I replied, "I used to now. I don't even know who I'd be outside of this trench." He gave a half nod as if he understood. We watched as night took over the horizon. Our trench grew colder. The lamps flickered in the far distance. A single artillery shell lit the sky, just one. Like a warning or a reminder that quiet never stays long. Sleep came slowly that night. I lay on my side, boots still on, my coat pulled tight around my shoulders. The earth beneath me felt softer than usual, but maybe I was just more tired than usual. I dreamed in my dream. I was walking through a field of tall grass. There were no fences, no guns, no uniforms, just grass swaying in the wind and the sun warming my back. I saw a figure ahead, a woman, her dress white, her hands folded in front of her. I couldn't see her face clearly, but somehow I knew it was my mother. She said nothing, just looked at me with eyes I hadn't seen in years. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. Then the field vanished. I was in the trench again, but it was quiet and empty. No bodies, no blood. Just the structure itself, mud, wood, wire, like an abandoned monument. And then I woke. The morning was colder than before. Fog clung to everything. Breath came out in clouds. I didn't speak to anyone for the first hour. Just walked the length of the trench, my boots crunching against frost-hardened soil. I passed the medic station. A new boy sat outside. He couldn't have been more than 14. His face was pale, his eyes wide. He looked at me and said, "Is this always like this?" I didn't know what to say, so I sat down next to him and said, "It gets quieter, that's all." He nodded, like that meant something. Later in the day, command called for volunteers to go topside to run a wire between our trench and the forward post. Most looked away. I stood up. I didn't do it to be brave. I did it because I couldn't sit anymore. The silence was becoming a second skin. They handed me the coil, and I climbed the ladder slowly. The sky was wide and gray. The air was still. I crouched low, moving fast. My heart beat like a drum. Every step above ground felt like a sin. Against nature, like I wasn't meant to be there, but I made it. I fastened the wire, signaled back, then crouched behind a burnt-out tree for a moment. There, I looked around. The land was flat, broken, no trees, no birds, just torn-up dirt, craters full of rainwater, and shattered helmets half buried like forgotten skulls. And for a moment, I wondered, what did this look like before? Before trenches, before war. Was there ever a time when children played here? When lovers held hands? When farmers watched the sky and hoped for rain? I didn't know. I might never know. I made it back safely. The others barely looked up. Everyone was too tired, too numb that night. I wrote a letter I would never send, not because I didn't want to, but because there was nowhere to send it to. I wrote, "Dear Mother, I don't know where I am anymore. Not really. I can hear my own thoughts now, and I'm not sure I like them. I remember your voice when I close my eyes. That helps. If this letter finds you, I want you to know. I tried. I tried to be brave. I tried to be whole, but I miss the sun. I miss home. I miss being human. Love always." I folded it, placed it in my pocket, and closed my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I slept without dreaming. Another morning arrived, but this one felt different. The trench was quieter than usual. Not because the war had stopped, but because so many of us were no longer here. Some had been taken to the rear, wounded beyond return. Some would never return at all. I sat alone, a tin cup of cold tea in my hand. The damp walls around me stained with time. This was the spot where we used to gather. To joke, to whisper, to survive together. Now, there was only silence. And memory. Alfred was gone. I last saw him carrying a wounded boy through falling debris. His face set with quiet courage. A flash, then smoke. Then nothing. Robert had been evacuated days ago. A deep wound to his shoulder, likely he'd never return to the line. Now, it was just me. The war still rumbled in the distance. But we could feel it. Something had changed. That afternoon, the word arrived. It might be ending. The armies were shifting. A truce was near. When the announcement came, no one cheered, no one shouted with joy. We just sat still, blank faces, wide eyes. Some of us didn't dare to believe it. I looked up. The same sky that had so often hidden fire and smoke was now streaked with light. Soft sunlight passed through gaps in the clouds, touching the earth like a hand we hadn't felt in years. I walked slowly to the edge of the trench, the far end, where we used to stand watch. I sat down on the muddy ground. The dirt clung to my coat. But I didn't care. Something inside me had come to rest. In my pocket was a small diary. I had written in it since the early days of the war. Now I opened it to the final page. I held my pencil for a long time, thinking of what to write. Then I let the words come gently. Greater than writing on the last page is harder than I thought. What do I say? Who do I speak of? So many gone. So much lost. But if anyone ever reads this, let them know asterisk. We didn't lose ourselves. We stayed human. We tried to love. We tried to remember who we were before the mud and smoke. I closed the diary, slipped it back into my coat. Maybe no one would ever read it, but I had written it, and that was enough. As the sun dipped lower, a young soldier arrived from the rear. He looked new, clean boots, wide eyes, fear hiding just beneath his voice. He sat beside me, nervously glancing around. Was it always like this? He asked. I smiled faintly and replied once, it was worse. He nodded. Like that somehow helped. I knew then it was time to move on. I packed my things, a spare pair of socks, a photograph of my younger brother, and that small, worn diary. I laced my boots slowly. Then, for the final time, I climbed the steps out of the trench. The air was clear, no shouting, no distant shells, just whined through grassland, the faraway sound of crows, for the first time in years. I looked up at the sky and smiled, a real smile. I walked forward, past broken fences and bent wire, through fields where nothing grew for so long, and I noticed something. Tiny green shoots were rising from the dirt. Grass. New life. The ground, too, had begun to heal, and I was learning to walk like a man again, not a soldier. Each step felt unfamiliar, like learning to breathe again, but I kept walking. I didn't look back. Behind me lay the trench, its memories carved deep into my bones. Ahead of me a road, not yet built. I didn't know where it led, but I knew I had to follow it. I had survived. That didn't make me whole. It didn't make me heroic, but it made me real, and that was enough. I reached a quiet spot under a tree, old, half-burnt, but still standing. I sat down at its base, closed my eyes, and listened. The air smelled of damp earth and distant rain, and in that silence, I heard something I hadn't heard in a long time. Peace, not the kind written in treaties or shouted by commanders, but the quiet kind, the kind that grows slowly, deep within the chest. I knew the war would live on inside me, in sounds, in dreams, in certain silences. But I also knew this sigh wasn't lost. And in the end, when they ask us what we became, I hope someone says they returned. Everything fades, time passes, but memories remain. If this story brought you even a little peace, a little sleep, then stay with us. For more quiet stories like this one, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Stay well and good night.